and welcome to the Tuesday, October 3rd meeting of the Eureka City Council. It's nice to see everybody. We're glad you're here. We're going to start with the land acknowledgement. The land that Eureka rests on is known as, in the Wiyot language, as Jirojiji. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments removed the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threatened to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledged the Wiyot community and their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And with that, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Castellano?
Here.
Councilmember Moulton?
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Here.
Councilmember Bauer?
Here.
Councilmember Contreras de Loche?
Here.
Mayor Burgell?
Here. And would all who care to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Speak to me. Thank you. We have some great stuff happening at this meeting, so we're going to get started now. We have a proclamation for Rotary. This is so fabulous. Service above self. If you don't know anything about Rotary, I would encourage you to get to know about Rotary. They do so much great things for our community. Just saying. So I'm going to read this proclamation. In recognition of Year of Rotary 2023. Whereas the Rotary Club of Eureka, California was formed in the year 1923, 100 years ago, and has since sponsored the formation of Rotary clubs in Arcata, Fortuna, Crescent City, and Southwest Eureka, has assisted in the formation of the Rotary clubs of Fort Bragg, Fortuna Sunrise, Ferndale, Old Town Eureka, Arcata Sunrise, and Mad River, has sponsored the Eureka High Excalibur Club, thank you, 1926 to 1945, the Eureka High Interact Club, 1969 to present, thank you, Las Coast Rotaract, 2009 to present, thank you. And whereas throughout the years, the Rotary Club of Eureka has generously sponsored and contributed to many worthwhile projects in our community, such as disaster relief, local and international, food security, healthcare enhancements, elimination of polio, educational support, environmental improvement, international cooperation, and whereas the club contributed financially to the Humboldt Room at Humboldt County Library, the Clark Museum Edition, the Morris Graves Art Museum, Community Blood Bank, youth sports and various youth organizations, military veteran recognition, assistance to community support groups such as Betty Chin, Rescue Mission, Teen Challenge, Redwoods United, support for the Eureka Police and Fire Departments, and whereas the club has provided scholarships to students at Eureka High School, St. Bernard's High School, College of the Redwoods, and Cal Poly Humboldt, and sponsored international inbound and outbound youth exchange since 1948, and whereas the Rotary Club of Eureka has been and continues to be of immeasurable assistance to the greater Eureka community through education, healthcare, development, improvement of the quality of life, business and tourist enhancements, and aid to the less fortunate. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Kim Burgell, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby proclaim that 2023 be recognized the Year of Rotary in Eureka in honor of the Rotary Club's centennial anniversary and all the service and goodwill shown to this community. Thank you. You want to come on up, Annalise? And anybody you brought with you? These are members of the Centennial Committee. Thanks for all your great work. It took a long time to read all that stuff. Good Lord, 100 years. We should all be so good, right? With our service. Oh, okay. Thank you. So, say a few words. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Burgell and the entire council. I'm Annalise von Borstel, and as president of Rotary Club of Eureka, it's an honor to receive this proclamation on behalf of our members who've placed service above self in our community for 100 years. Rotary Club of Eureka held its first meeting on October 10th, 1923, with the goals of fostering strong community connections that result in opportunities for service, high ethical standards in business, the application of the ideal of service throughout our lives, and world peace and fellowship through service. Of the things we think, say, or do, Rotarians are guided by the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? We meet every Monday at noon at the historic Eagle House Inn at 2nd and C. Next Saturday, October 14th, 2023, Rotary Club of Eureka will be holding our Centennial Gala, a celebration of the history of Rotary as well as the greater Eureka community. And I encourage anyone who would like to attend to reach out to Club of Eureka Rotary at gmail.com. And Rotary Club of Eureka looks forward to serving Humboldt for the next 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you. You are truly appreciated. Okay, and next up in my mayor's reports, we're going to have Lynn McKenna come up and tell us a little bit about the Redwood Music Festival happening this week.
Thank you, Mayor Burgell and City Council. Let me get organized here. So first off, this is our official poster this year, designed again by Matt Beard. So if you're looking at the back of me, the poster's on the back of my shirt. So this is the poster. And I'll give this to you, Pam. And here's all your packets. So in addition to presenting the poster to you as we do annually, we also want to let you know that our board unanimously voted to dedicate this year's festival to the City of Eureka and its staff. So let me read the dedication. It says, Redwood Coast Music Festivals is 33 years old this year, and we are producing our 31st annual festival for all to enjoy, not just our local community, but also attendees from all over the country. We just had a hotel call us and tell us they got a reservation from somebody from Ireland that's traveling cross country and wants to come, so we can be international now. We have seen many changes over the years, including our name, the length of the festival, and the different genres of music we continue to provide for your listening and dancing pleasure. We have also overcome many obstacles: flooded venues, landslides, road closures, flight delays that have left musicians stuck everywhere trying to get up here. There have been behind-the-scenes technical issues and 2 years of COVID. Through all of this, one thing has remained constant: the unwavering support we get from the City of Eureka and its amazing staff. From elected officials to clerical staff to employees working the venues, everyone is ready and willing to help us put on a great festival. Therefore, the Redwood Coast Music Festival's Board of Directors dedicate the 31st Annual Redwood Coast Music Festival to the City of Eureka and all its staff who help make this community event happen every year. If you see city officials or staff out and about at the festival this weekend, please extend them your thank you.
Oh, that's very
Okay, and there's
sweet.
copies.
Thank you.
So with that being said, the festival actually starts Thursday night with a kickoff dance at the Adorni Center. The doors open at 6 and the music goes from 6 to 10:30, starting off with our local CR jazz band, Dave Stuckey and his group, and then ending with Carl Sonny Leland. That's a paid event to get into, but to complement that, on the other side, the Red Lion will be hosting 3 sets of music from local bands, the Freshwater Jazz Band, Nice and Easy, and the ever-popular Redwood Dixie Gators, and that is free to the public. Friday opening ceremonies begin at 1, and that is free to the public, and then the festival kicks off at all 7 venues. So the venues are the Red Lion on Thursday and Sunday nights are free, the Adorni Center, the Eagle House, the Eureka Theater on Friday and Saturday, Morris Graves Museum, the Veterans Building, and the Sequoia Conference Center. And so that's quite a large area to cover, and there's lots of things happening this weekend. It's going to be crazy in Old Town downtown, so we have a free shuttle service. So park your car at one of the bigger parking lots and hop on the shuttle and just enjoy the weekend. So thank you, and thank you to the city for all your support.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I'm sad I won't be able to attend. I'm going to be out of town, but I have Councilmember Castellano and Councilmember Contreras-Deloach filling in, so that'll be great. All right. And next we have Volunteer Month recap. So this last month, as you know, is Volunteer Month. So thank you, everybody that came out. It was really wonderful. Oh, and it's Recreation Supervisor Jim Thomas.
We're ready. All right. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'm Jim Thomas, Community Services Recreation Supervisor. I'm here with the City of Eureka and here to present about Volunteer Month and our neighborhood beautification program just in general, too. So just a little background on the neighborhood beautification program. It was piloted in 2021 by Robin Prasker and Leslie Castellano. The purpose of it is for community members to adopt a neighborhood and host cleanup and create that community engagement and stewardship within their community. Opportunities go year round, but September is a month we really wanted to dedicate and was proclaimed last year as Volunteer Month to celebrate and recognize volunteers. And as you can see with the stats on the screen here, the impact is definitely real with the amount of trash that gets picked up, the amount of green waste that gets removed, and also the amount of plants that we plant. So definitely a very effective program, and some groups, have a reoccurring weekly or monthly event. And I would like to say that the Myrtle Grove Cemetery is a shining example of that. They started in 2015, and we chose to highlight them this year with this dedication video to their efforts.
Why do I volunteer? Well, I'm retired, so I have some time, and wanted to give back to the community. I like living here. Wanted to give back. When we first started out, it was kind of like a treasure hunt, we pokers, we go around and find the stones that had been buried over time, and that was fun. Now we're into pretty much maintenance, and maybe not quite as much fun, but it makes the cemetery look good. It gives me something to do, and it is a historical cemetery. So in that sense, it's like keeping something going that should be going. And if anybody wants to volunteer, come on out. Wednesday mornings at 10. If we get too many bodies, we can always set up a different time.
So that is just one example of our dedicated volunteer groups. We have some other ones like the Ivy League and our Old Town Beautification that reoccur monthly or weekly. And thank you to Joseph Carter for making a nice video there. Whoops. Okay, so we're going to dive back into the Volunteer Month topic here. And last year was the first year that we had Volunteer Month. We had 4 events, one at the Boardwalk, one at the Wharfinger, one at Hammond Park, and one at the Old Town Gazebo. We thought it was very successful and well attended. And this year we kind of wanted to make it a little bit bigger and add more partners and also add more prizes to try to get more people to show up. And we also got lucky that there was a 5th Saturday in September this year. So we got to have 5 events instead of 4. On September 2nd, we were in Old Town working on 2nd Street, removing weeds and picking up trash in the surrounding areas. We had 11 people show up, and bagels and gift cards were donated by Los Bagels to kind of create more of that partnership like I was just talking about there. This is also a reoccurring event on the first Saturday of the odd-numbered months, so that would be like January, March, May, the first Saturday, and so forth of those months that are odd-numbered. And we hope people can make it out to those. On September 9th, we went down to the Del Norte Dog Park to spread wood chips throughout the park and also fill up that 6 cubic yard trash can there. We had a 19 volunteers there that day and a pet gift basket donated by Petco. And you can see the delighted pair of people up there that won the basket with their dog. So definitely a good feel-good event. September 12th, we had 12 attendees at the Wharfinger building, and this was a city staff volunteer event. So that everybody got the invite to take a little break from the office and go plant some plants around the Wharfinger building. There was also some pizza involved at that event, so another successful turnout. On September 16th, we had 12 volunteers show up to the Old Town Gazebo. This is an ongoing project with the Weehawken Cultural Center, as well as Dennis Houghton has been helping with the lead on that too. And he was recognized for his efforts and consistency for that at our celebration party at the end of the year, or at the end of the month, excuse me. We had gift cards donated by the North Coast Co-op, and we are going to actually be working with the Rotary on October 15th to finish planting the gazebo. And we hope anybody who's around on October 15th, 10 to noon, could come out and make it and get involved that day. September 23rd, we had 17 volunteers show up to the Sequoia Park Ivy Leagues event. The group's really consistent. They have a monthly event, usually with a really good turnout, to remove invasive ivy from Sequoia Park. The zoo, Sequoia Park Zoo, dedicated some passes and donated those, so everybody who attended gets a free pass to the zoo. So another good turnout, and really grateful for Heidi to keep consistent events going. Heidi's the coordinator for that. September 28th, we had the City Hallers come back, which is our City Hall volunteer group. Everybody gets the same invite like on September 12th to take a break from the office, and we had our roundup, we called it. There were 4 categories for the most trash by weight, the most weeds by weight, the most cigarette butts, and the most interesting piece of trash. And the winner of each one of those categories got a gift card from either the Carter House Inn or Pacific Outfitters. And we had 13 city staff show up to this and 1 dog. So we rounded out Volunteer Month on September 30th at Hammond Park. We've been working with Centro del Pueblo. They've been upkeeping the flower beds there at Hammond Park. And we really wanted to extend the idea of this event to be like as community oriented as possible and reach out to as many partners as we could get. So we had CASA, Latino Outdoors, the Sequoia Park Ivy League, Keep Eureka Beautiful, Humboldt Trails Council, Pack Out Green Team, Centro del Pueblo, all groups who donate their time and energy to the community. And we just wanted to bring as many like-minded, positive people together to have a fun day and a fun event at Hammond Park. We had some really good sponsors for this event. Dutch Bros, the Pacific Outfitters, Jitterbean, the Tofu Shop donated, and Pearson's Building Center donated a $250 gift card for a grand prize for those people that attended, or for the one person who won it that attended all 4 events throughout the month. So really great to work with different sponsors and different partners in the organization, and I think we did a really good job with the grand finale here. We had 75 people that attended, I would say. Our dynamic community services staff there barbecued up and served up some tacos. We also had lawn games and different prizes throughout the day that were gifted out. Keep Eureka Beautiful showed up, planted a tree. We had a face painter as well there that day. So we turned it, less about the work and more about celebrating and recognizing those who donate their time to the community. And, we had gave out some vests for those consistent volunteers, Dennis, Heidi, and the folks from the Myrtle Cemetery volunteer group as well. So like I was saying at the beginning, the program runs year-round as well. We just take September to recognize and, go big and do as many events as we can. So we did 7 this last month. And if anybody out there is interested, they can, reach out to the phone number or the email or go to empowereureka.org. If you're passionate about a specific location in Eureka or have an idea for a cleanup, we'll help you with supplies, help with advertising the program or advertising your event, and just try to get as many people there as we can and build that sense of community, and just keep Eureka beautiful. So with that being said, I would turn it over for any questions, and thank you for the time tonight as well.
Do we have any questions from council? Councilmember Bauer?
No, I just want to thank you, Jim and Robin and Leslie, for really getting this going and making it happen. I mean, 1,000 volunteers since 2021 is pretty good job. And I had a good time at Hammond Park. And so thank you for all you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm glad you could make it out too.
Thank you.
It's fun.
I only got to stay a brief time,
Well, you made it though.
but I had fun while I was there.
Right on.
Right, there you go. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for the time.
You betcha. Okay, and next up I have just a few more things in my mayor's report. I was trying to keep it brief, but so much has happened, so I will try and make this as short as possible. The first thing that I wanted to share is my appreciation for all the work that our community does. We have so many people that volunteer their time on so many levels all the time, all day, every day. And I thought it was great that you had a picture of Stan the man up there. Stan is at we honored him last year, I believe it was, but he has been at every single volunteer thing ever possible known to Eureka, I think. So we really appreciate him. Yeah, 2 centuries. Yeah, there you go. I love that. So I also wanted to let folks know that we did have our town hall on Saturday, and we had a nice turnout. We did have tacos. If you weren't there, you missed out. It was about children's mental health. We had some great speakers, some great conversations, and you can go on Talk Eureka to continue the conversation. And if you want to know what that is, you can talk to me later about that or call me. And then, we went on 2 cruise ships and welcomed them in. And then we did travel. I want to tell you about the 2 most important things, though, okay, first, and then I'll tell you about my travel. So I just want to say 2 things. One of them is that every 6 months I get a call from this particular person who used to be on the streets, and I met him at Dock B. So every 6 months he calls me on the phone, and he thanks us. He thanks Uplift, and he thanks the people that helped him for the life that he has now, that he's housed and his wife is housed, and they get their medical stuff taken care of. Anyway, the reason he called me the last time wasn't because it was only 6 months. He had gotten this contract, he thinks maybe for even a rap concert thing. So I'm like super excited for him. It's like the best thing that happened, that people do recover, people do get better, people don't always, once on the streets is not always on the streets. So I really want to highlight that we have this in our community all the time, people making positive changes in their lives. And I think it's really helpful sometimes when we can turn the glasses around and really look for that. And then secondly, I got to do an interview with Lost Coast Populists. And as you know, Lost Coast Populists, they like to come and talk in public comment oftentimes. And it was a really great interview. And I really want to talk about that because the most important piece of that was the willingness for both of us to have a conversation. We don't agree on everything, but the willingness to sit down and have a conversation about that, not a disrespectful dialogue, but a place where we could actually enjoy the conversation. It made a huge impact. And, it's those little hits, those little ripples that we make that really make an impact in our community. And our community is so full of people that act like this all the time. But I just wanted to highlight those couple things. And then lastly, I did go to the League of Cities, California League of Cities. I went to a lot of different workshops about free speech, decorum, how to get, how to keep your meeting running smoothly, how to get city business done when you've got people that are kind of trying to derail you in that. So that was really important and very interesting. And I have to tell you, I was really grateful, not because I'm glad that other people have to do it the same thing that we do, but I was grateful to see that some of them, actually some of it's worse. And that sounds terrible to say it out loud like that, but it made me feel better about, our meetings and how we go. We don't have people coming to our house and spray painting or anything like that. So that felt really good. And then there was a great keynote speaker, Brandon Fleming. Look him up. There you go. That's my mayor's report. And so we're going to move on to public comment. This is the time. Oh, no. Yes. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on any item that does not appear on the agenda. So, do we have anybody here in chambers for public comment tonight? Hi, Claudette. Welcome.
It's good to see you, Mayor and Council. I have some good news and I have some bad news to share with you. The bad news is that, unfortunately, we are all sinners and none of us are righteous. And the wages of sin is death. That is what the Word of God tells me. That's the wages of sin. So I will read you a scripture because there is some good news to this. When we were unable to help ourselves at the moment of our need, Christ died for us, although we were living against God. Very few people will die to save the life of someone else, although perhaps for a good person, someone might possibly die. But God shows his great love for us in this way. Christ died for us while we were still sinners. So through Christ, we will surely be saved from God's anger because we have been made right with God by the blood of Christ. I'm very grateful to be saved by Christ Jesus because I was a very, very bad sinner. And I'm not saying that I don't sin anymore, but the good news is that I can repent and that I believe that Christ died for me so that I can repent and be saved. I'm sure you all know John 3:16, which says, God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son so that whoever believes in him may not be lost, but have eternal life. God did not send his Son into the world to judge the world guilty, but to save the world through him. People who believe in God's Son are not judged guilty. Those who do not believe have already been judged guilty because they have not believed in God's one and only Son. They are judged by this fact. The light has come into the world, but they did not want light. They wanted darkness, sin, because they were doing evil things. All who do evil hate the light and will not come to the light, because it will show all the evil things they do. But those who follow the true way come to the light, and it shows that the things they do were done through God. So what is the answer? It is repent and believe on the one whom God has sent. And repentance is believing that he will save us. He will deliver us. He delivered me from drugs. He delivered me from all kinds of nonsense. I could write a novel on the things that I did that were against God. But through the blood of Christ and my belief, I am set free. So again, I will tell you, the message of the gospel is repent and believe that Christ died for our sins. And through Christ dying through our sins, and we believe that, we have life. And I encourage you again to repent and believe. I will not see you no more the rest of this year because I have another mission. Nevertheless, I'm going to continue to keep you in my prayers, for this message is yours as well as it is for me. Amen?
Thank you, Claudette. Thanks for being here. Is there anyone else in chambers who'd like to speak on this side on public comment? Hello and welcome.
Hello. Good evening, council members. For those of you I haven't chatted with yet, I'm Cameron Hanf from Decriminalize Nature Humboldt, the group that's been in contact with you about the decriminalization of entheogenic plants and fungi, such as psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca. I wanted to give you all a rundown on our roundtable event, which we hosted last Thursday, September 28th at Labor Temple. We advertised this opportunity for community members to come ask questions about, show support for, and express any concerns about our proposed resolution to a couple thousand people using our social media pages and newsletter. Additionally, the September 20th issue of the Lumberjack newspaper, which I have in my hands, included details for the event. Invitations were also sent via email more than a week in advance to Police Chief Jarvis, Sergeant LaFonce, Head of School District Gary Storts, and all of you. Of the county officials who we invited, 2 were in attendance, which happened to be 2 council members who are in front of me today. We greatly appreciate you 2 taking the time out of your busy week to spend the evening with us, asking important questions and listening to members of our community express their desires to see entheogenic plant medicines decriminalized. Not one person in attendance came to express opposition. Additionally, I wanted to report to you all a running count of the letters of support that have been signed by community members. We've been dropping these off to you weekly. 447 of these have been dropped off to you, and I have 191 more in my hands that I wanted to give to you personally. This brings the total to 668, which we collected just in the past month. I mentioned this at the roundtable, but I'll say it again because I think the statement says a lot. My team and I collected 149 of these in just 3 hours at Friday Night Market. That's almost a minute per letter between 4 of us. We managed to get 120 more signed this past Friday Night Market. So if you're still wondering if this is really something your constituents want, I'd say it's an enthusiastic yes from what my team and I have seen. I think Eureka's ready for a vote. Thank you for your time and all you do.
Thanks for being here. Is there anyone else in chambers that wanted to speak during public comment? Seeing no one, do you see anyone on Zoom?
Is there anyone on Zoom for public comment?
Althea?
Wow, quiet night there today. So I just wanted to let you guys know that yesterday I was down in Old Town after running an errand, and I had a little while before I got my bus home, which, by the way, I hope you guys are at least trying the week without driving this week. I'm ready to help with that. But anyways, I was standing around for a little bit, and I noticed a couple of cars making rolling stops there at 3rd and F Street, where it was just repaved, and the crosswalks and stop lines have not been completely restriped yet. Apparently, this is deeply confusing to drivers in the city, and they have completely forgotten apparently what a stop sign means. In about 15 minutes, I recorded 27 drivers making rolling stops just at that intersection, and it wasn't even a particularly busy day. I do want to give props to, there was a City of Eureka crew in a pickup truck who not only, came to a complete stop at the stop sign, what a concept, but they, tried to let some pedestrians pass. So really good job there, guys. Really bad job, all the other drivers. But yeah, hopefully we will get those intersections restriped very soon. Because like I said, apparently everyone forgot what a 4-way stop is. And I've seen that spilling over into other intersections in Old Town, even ones that do have crosswalks and red lights. People are having a hard time understanding that they're supposed to stop when the light is red, not in the crosswalk, especially when there's a person trying to cross. So hopefully we can get that taken care of soon. And again, I hope you guys are at least trying the week without driving this week.
Thanks, Althea. Do you see anyone else?
I see no one else.
Okay. So we'll close public comment and we'll open the public hearing. Well, we won't open the public hearing. We'll have a discussion first. So Development Service Director Kenyon, this is on the 2023 zoning code update.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint. Tonight I'm presenting on the annual Inland Zoning Code update. This update does make some changes to design review. Whoops. Somebody's controlling my screen. So because there's some changes to design review, part of my presentation, I'm going to spend some time talking about design review and trying to answer some of the questions council's raised about it in the past, particularly when retired principal planner gets presented on the topic at your March 21st meeting. Wait, let me click. There we go. All right, so this amendment applies to the inland portion of the city, which is the brightly colored area on the map. The blue line is the coastal zone boundary, and the black dotted line is the city boundaries. The zoning code for the inland portion of the city is Chapter 155 of the Eureka Municipal Code, and it was comprehensively updated by the city in 2019. And the city staff has been attempting to bring annual updates of the new code since then to quickly address issues that arise and not let it get outdated. 4 cleanup amendments have occurred. 3 of them were in June of 2020, 21, and 22, and then there was another one in January of 22, and that was when that was prompted by the passage of SB 9 and the need to bring our code in compliance with that state law. So as staff uses the code day to day to apply to project applications and inquiries, we identify and take note of things that we'd like to see changed. And these things fall into the following categories. Fixing errors like incorrect references to other code sections, correcting inconsistencies where 2 code sections appear to conflict, improving the readability of the code, such as by adding references to related sections for ease of navigation, addressing omissions, such as realizing common uses like movie theaters and car washes don't seem to fit neatly into one of our use type categories in the code, and so we need to add another use type category. Resolving questions of interpretation. So if we're having a long debate about the meaning of a code section, that tips us off that we need to add some clarification. And then also addressing unintended outcomes of the code that are inconsistent with our general plan. So for instance, the code prohibits new single-family residences in mixed use and multifamily zones to push us towards increased density. So if you're proposing housing in a mixed use or a multifamily zone, you have to propose 2 or more units. And somebody came in and they had an office building already and they wanted to add a house behind it that they could live in, and we had to say no because that was a new single family residence. And so this code update builds in an exception for new single family residences that are proposed in a conjunction with a non-residential primary use, because our general plan has tons of policies that promote live-work units, and this code provision unintentionally disallows them. So that's an example of that. And then also to address inconsistencies with state law, this update ensures compliance with state limitations on how local governments regulate accessory dwelling units, family daycare homes, and emergency shelters. Also, there's some changes that are meant to help the city earn a pro-housing designation, like putting in a provision that requires us to process an accessory dwelling unit application within 45 days of receiving a complete application. So the Planning Commission reviewed the proposed annual update at their hearing, at a public hearing on September 11th. And they voted to recommend that council approve it as proposed by staff. They did express concerns with how accessory dwelling units are treated on historic properties on the local register of historic places. If there's external alterations that aren't like for like that are visible from the street, they have to go to Historic Preservation Commission, which is a subjective process. And as we've discussed, the state doesn't want subjective review of accessory dwelling units. So we added clarifications about when this subjective historic preservation review would not be required. So if the ADU was created was just created through the conversion of interior space, and there's no exterior alterations, that wouldn't require Historic Preservation Commission review. Or if it's in a new attachment that's not visible from public vantage points, or if it's a detached new construction ADU. And since hearing from Planning Commission, we added a standard, an objective standard that would be if the new detached ADU was not located between a historic building and a street. So if it's behind it, it wouldn't need Historic Preservation Commission review. If they're not meeting that locational standard, then they'd have to come in for subjective review. And Planning Commission recommended that staff research objective design standards for historic properties before the next annual code update, and staff's on board doing that. So I wanted to touch on one of the changes that is proposed is exempting housing projects of up to 4 units from subjective design review. Right now, single family homes are exempt from subjective design review, but any multifamily housing, including a duplex, would require subjective design review. Our code includes both subjective design review and objective design standards. The objective design standards is a new thing, not until the 2019 comprehensive update. Before that, we didn't have objective design standards in the code. We had, minimal requirements for landscaping, but we really buffed it up and made a lot of extensive, detailed objective standards. So subjective design review approval occurs at a noticed public hearing by the Design Review Committee or another decision-making body, whereas the objective design standards are reviewed by staff and approved by staff because they're ministerial. So there's 8 subjective standards that the design review approval are based on, and one of them, an example, is the overall project design enhances Eureka's unique character and distinctive sense of place. So that involves personal judgment. It's not a uniform benchmark that everybody would interpret the same way. Whereas an objective design standard is that you're not allowed to have blank walls fronting a public street that are 10 feet by 10 feet or larger. And if you go around to our areas that have commercial and mixed use and multifamily housing, this is a huge standard because we have so many blank walls facing streets that are no longer allowed in new construction. So this standard alone has been huge in aesthetically approving our new developments. Staff believes that the objective standards that have been added to the code are really helping ensure things are aesthetically pleasing to the point where we feel like exempting housing projects of up to 4 units from subjective design review is not going to compromise, Eureka's attractiveness or sense of place. And there are a lot of standards, but I wanted to just highlight some of the most impactful ones. The no blank walls one. Oh, yeah, and it's important to note we've had subjective design review since 1966, and arguably we've developed a lot of things that maybe aren't that attractive or contribute positively to Eureka's sense of place through our subjective design review process. So no blank walls would be allowed. It also requires an equivalent degree of detailing on each street-facing side of a building. So this building we're looking at, this is one street-facing side, and it's on a corner, so the side that you can see with windows is the other street-facing side. Both sides would have to have an equivalent degree of detailing, and they're required to have at least 2 of this long list of architectural details. So that's something we look at. Also, if you have a ground floor unit that has its own entrance, that entrance is supposed to be on the street-facing side with a walkway to the sidewalk, instead of how it is now where it's not visible and it's tucked in. And all of this is trying to make it more active and engaging and interesting to look at from the street. This standard is huge and is totally changing how Eureka looks. We're no longer allowing surface parking between a primary building and the street. We have so many developments that occurred in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, where it's, you're walking on the sidewalk and there's a giant empty parking lot between you and a building. Now you're not allowed to do that. Your building has to be up against the street and your parking lot has to be behind it, so that a pedestrian is walking by windows and seeing, a building instead of walking by a really empty parking lot, which creates this psychological distance and feeling of uncomfortableness. Also, we really upped our parking lot landscaping requirements. You have to have interior landscaping, exterior landscaping, and lots of trees in both. And also, there's more requirements for landscaping between buildings and the sidewalk. 50% minimum vegetation, 75% of that vegetation has to be native. So getting back to subjective design review, we've touched on this before, but something that's been streamlined already is that if you have multiple discretionary permits, they all go together to the highest review authority. So if there's no other discretionary permits required except for design review approval, you go to the design review committee. But if you need another discretionary permit from a higher body, you just go there for all your permits, including design review. So if historic preservation review is required because your property on the local register, you'd go to the Historic Preservation Commission for both historic preservation review and design review. And if you needed a use permit, a variance, or a coastal development permit, which are things acted on by the Planning Commission, you'd do that at the same time as design review at the Planning Commission. And I try to think of when City Council might do design review, and if you were proposing a development that needed a land use map or zoning change, which is something Council acted on, then in that case you might be doing design review approval. And in terms of appeals, if design review committee, their decision can be appealed to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's decision can be appealed to the City Council. Historic Preservation Commission, their decisions get appealed directly to the City Council. Assistant Planner Melissa Smith researched design review stats from when we comprehensively updated the code in 2019 until May of this year. And there were 59 design review projects during that time. 75% of them went to the design review committee. So these 75% of them, they didn't need any other discretionary approval except for design review. The design review committee has 5 members. They have to have professional experience, and they do, in fields of architecture, land development, landscape architecture, or other design-related professions. They meet twice a month, which is more than Historic Preservation or Planning Commission meet. And 2/3 of their regular meetings have been canceled during that same time period due to not having items. So that's an interesting stat. They don't always have stuff to do. And so the permit process for subjective design review is we get an application, staff makes sure it meets all objective design standards before we complete it. Then we send it out for referral to interested agencies and other departments, which is a 10 business day referral period. We prepare a staff report That takes a lot of effort because there's 8 subjective design criteria that we have to, write a paragraph for each about why the project is or isn't consistent with that. Then there's a 10-day mailing public notice. We post public notice at the site. We put it on our website. We mail it out to people who live within 300 feet of the property. And then we have a public hearing. And because it's a discretionary process, it triggers CEQA. So we also have to do a CEQA determination. And then there's a 10-day appeal period after the meeting. And then they come in for their building permit. And sometimes they need to make modifications to what was approved. And so then they have to go back to square one and go back to the design review committee to approve the modifications. So the cost of this is $950 for a design review approval. It's important to note it's only in the coastal zone, design review doesn't require a public hearing, and so it only costs $360. So a lot of the cost is because of the noticing involved in having a public hearing and noticing it. For the objective design standards, planning staff just reviews those whenever we get a permit for subjective design review approval or whenever we get a building permit. We review it as part of the building permit, and we don't charge any additional money for that review. So it's a much quicker process than subjective design review. So multifamily housing is principally permitted everywhere that's in yellow on this map, and it's conditionally permitted in the pink areas. So because it's principally permitted in most places, it doesn't require a use permit. So it typically, design review is the only discretionary approval required for multifamily housing. Otherwise, CEQA wouldn't be triggered, and it would just be an administrative thing. If they meet the objective standards of the code, they get approved. Design review is the one discretionary permit often required. The exceptions to that are if you're in the hospital medical district, which is the district on Henderson and Pink, or if you're in the commercial waterfront district, which is the pink district on the north end of the city, or if you're on the local register, then you need historic preservation review. Or if you want to deviate from a standard, then you might need a zoning change or a variance. Also, if you're in the coastal zone and you're not in a categorical exclusion zone, you need a coastal development permit. So here, yellow is where multifamily is allowed, and light purple are places where it wouldn't need a coastal development permit. So the remaining yellow is where it would need it. Looking at that same planning period from when we adopted, when the new inland code went into effect in 2019, in May of this year, 12 projects went to design review. 12 multifamily housing projects went to design review. We actually approved over 200 units during that time in 12 separate projects. 11 of those projects went to the design review committee. 5 of them were affordable housing, 5 were market rate, and 1 went to planning commission. So that means 11 out of those 12 projects, design review was the only discretionary review required. And design review committee only denied 1 of the projects, which the applicant then appealed to the planning commission, and the planning commission approved it. And that was one of the market rate housing projects. So one question that has arisen is, why do applicants dislike subjective design review approval? As I've laid out, it's a lot of additional time and money for a discretionary process. Also, it triggers CEQA. And often we can exempt it and it doesn't cost the applicant anything. But if they do need to do an initial study, like if they're on a site that was previously contaminated, right now consultants in the area are charging upwards of $10,000 to $30,000 for an environmental document. And then you have to give the city a $3,000 deposit for city staff review. of that document because it's often 100 or more pages. And then there's also just the extra publicity of having noticing and a hearing and the ability and discretionary approvals where there's the ability to object to them and appeal them. And there's ways for people who don't like a project to derail it. Whereas if you just have a ministerial project approval process, you don't have that ability, which I'm talking about why applicants dislike it. That's actually a good thing, to have public knowledge and input on projects if you're, the city. There's also the uncertainty of subjectivity. So to apply and to get your to have a complete application, you have to have done already detailed design for your submittal. But you don't know how the design review committee is going to interpret those subjective standards. So you're designing without really knowing the rules. And then you go to design review committee and you might meet all the objective standards in the code, but they might ask for changes, and then you're having to redesign. Also, when you go to construction, often the designs that go to design review committee, they were drawn by an architect, and then you go to construction, your contractor is like, no, we can't do X, Y, or Z. We need to make this or this change. These plant species aren't available. And then if it's a substantial change, it has to go back to design review committee. So for instance, out of those 11 housing projects, 5 of them had to go back to design review committee a second time for a modification. And per our fee schedule, that's 75% of the original price. So they have to pay an additional $713 to go back. And the larger picture is that the state has been passing these laws that are really limiting subjective design review for cities. Per these new laws, really we must approve housing consistent with the city's objective standards. And we cannot deny a housing project or reduce its density based on a subjective design standard. And we can't adopt any new subjective design standards. Also, the state has this pro-housing designation we're trying to get. It's going to be great for us if we get it because it'll open up grant funding and make us more competitive. And HCD, the state looks really poorly on subjective design reviews. So removing it helps us gain more points. Also, there have been social justice issues raised about like allowing an appointed board to, have such purview over such a subjective thing where it's very value laden, and whether they represent the community or not, just based on the requirements to be on the board, you're going to be, probably making more money than the typical resident. So for all these reasons, more and more cities are moving away from subjective design review. And now what we're seeing, which is our sign permitting is a good example of this, is that if the project meets objective standards, cities are trying to create a quick administrative approval process for them. But if people want to deviate from those objective standards, then they create a second discretionary process that they can go through. That's longer and harder to get out of that. I was going to talk about other changes, but they're in the agenda summary, so I'm going to skip that. And then, so overall, the recommendation is to hold a public hearing and to introduce Bill number 1032 for CS for the 2023 zoning code update. And I have a motion when you're ready.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any questions for Councilmember Moulton?
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. And there's a lot of ground to cover. Few questions about some of the subjective standards. The blank walls facing the street. Where did some of these come from? The things that are brand new?
Good question. I was not here when the code was adopted. I know lots of cities are going to objective standards, so I'm sure we looked at what other cities were doing, and it's all the blank walls and their effect on the aesthetics are kind of an obvious thing. I don't know how we got to 10 feet by 10 feet, but I think that it was an obvious addition to the objective standards for the blank walls specifically, just because we have so many. When we look at like what we don't like about the multifamily housing that's been developed since the 60s, and you look at pictures, it's like, oh, the street facing side is completely blank with no windows, you know. Whereas if you look at our older development, it's so detailed, like architecturally detailed. It's so much more interesting.
Speaking of detail, so the idea of an equal detail on all street-facing sides, you want to skim over the list. Could you give me some examples of, I'm just thinking about, you were looking at that apartment building, and on one side there's the windows and the doors, and they're clearly on the living rooms and things like that, and then there's one side that's just all vents. And there might be a very practical reason why there aren't any openings on that side of the building. So what's an example of equal detail that wouldn't get in the way or make construction be unnecessarily expensive or cumbersome?
Yeah, that's somewhat of a subjective objective standard. We have this long list of, you know, architectural details in the objective design standards in the code, and some of them are using like two different types of siding, where it's still, there's no windows, but you just or it's, you have a projection, so the second floor projects a little bit, so you have that, or you have variable roof height.
Okay. So we're not talking about forcing windows or openings or changing where people put their plumbing or anything like that. It's more like just something that's going to break up these massive planes of concrete or wallboard. The 10 by 10 limitation stuck out to me as a muralist. I was like, dang, we really enjoy all these blank canvases around Eureka, but I suppose there's plenty to work on. The other question I had, if you don't mind, is actually might not be relevant. I was thinking about the qualifications for folks to be on design review, but never mind. Forget that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Castellano.
Thanks. Thank you for the report. I was curious in terms of some of the, you said that there were, 7 examples of modifications that design review committee recommended that then had to be brought back before design review. I'm curious if you've done kind of an analysis of these and if some of those could be incorporated into the objective design review standards.
Yeah, I think that was a little misleading how I said that, because some of those that went back for a modification, it's because they had decided to change their project, not because the design review committee had required a change.
Okay, great.
But yeah, in terms of what the design review committee has said about projects, like the one that they denied, one of the things was that the safety of how the circulation was, which is not really in their purview. We could research it more and see if they've given any. I know before they've recommended that the stuff to make sure that what they're putting in is going to be good for the climate here and the its durability, given like the bay and so yeah, that's a good idea. To look at recommendations they've made in the past and see if we can buff up our objective standards even more using like the kind of stuff they've recommended in the past.
Yeah, it was just I mean, I could see that being one way of looking at potentially emerging standards. Is there any concern about like additional staff time if more of this is going through staff now?
Already, the new objective design standards, it's requiring a lot more staff time to review building permits. So it's kind of, we're already dealing with it.
Okay, well, thank you. And then let's see, a couple of questions about and thank you for the really detailed analysis of all the changes. That was really useful. So in, I guess, section 23 on page 308-8 that you had referenced, the solid waste material storage, I was just curious. I appreciate the change in terms of looking at screening from more than just parking lots of dumpsters, basically. I think that makes sense. And I guess my question is just, I imagine there's quite a few dumpsters that maybe won't meet those standards now. And so will we be offering ways of, I know this is something that's been in the works, like will we be offering ways to support businesses and building owners to meet those standards once this change is made, if we pass it tonight?
That's a good question. A thing to know is that, like, if you already have existing trash enclosure that isn't shielded, we're not gonna come and write you up. You're allowed to have that because it's grandfathered. You had it already. But we have some triggers in our non-conformities review for when an existing development would have to upgrade and make that improvement. And it's if they're coming to us to build something that's valued at $55,000 or more, that's when we would require them to add the shielding of the trash enclosure, or if they're coming in for a use permit entitlement. Otherwise, we wouldn't require it. I don't know if our facade improvement grant, you know what? Our SEPTED grant would probably be allowed to be used for that, because restricting access to trash cans is a helpful thing for safety.
Awesome. Thank you. And then one more minor question. The section on window transparency, 340-18, I think. I was just curious, this is like a very obscure question. Maybe, will this affect like cannabis lounges or like consumption lounges? Or are there special provisions for those?
Cannabis lounges have come in on pedestrian focused frontages, and we have said that state law trumps us in this case, and we let them not meet the transparency requirements.
Gotcha.
But we could add a provision to the code to make that clear in the future.
I mean, I think I think we all know that state law would prevail. So thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you. And thank you for putting together this presentation. I just had a few questions. Going back to almost the beginning, you had highlighted the difficulty for developing ADUs at already sites that have been deemed historical preservation. And so have any ADUs been held up or not able to move forward as a result of historical preservation?
No. Since I've been here in 2021, there's just been, that I know of, one new ADU on Bay Street that had to go through Historic Preservation Commission review, and it just was a longer process. We do waive the fee for Historic Preservation review for people that haven't done the work already without permits, so they didn't have to pay for it, but it definitely
slowed it down.
We didn't meet the 45-day approval deadline that we're setting for ourselves.
But there hasn't been a project that hasn't moved forward.
No,
okay.
Not that I know of, but I'll let you guys know if I learn of one.
And then you'd also highlighted that CEQA could be triggered at a specific point in, trying to remember here because there were a few different committees that you referred to. Was it design? Anytime
the city... a city discretionary permit is required, that triggers CEQA. So a private project, if it's just a building permit you need, CEQA isn't triggered. But if the city has to take a discretionary action on a private project, that's when a private project requires CEQA.
And is that where we would exempt it, or it's just not required? Because you said there are times where we could provide an exemption. So I'm curious.
Yeah, that's confusing. So when CEQA is triggered, then we look at there's a few different CEQA pathways. You can meet an exemption, like CEQA is required, but you're exempt because it's an infill exception. And most projects in Eureka meet an infill exemption. Where you have to do the bigger documents, where in Eureka is the second tier is the initial study, mitigated neg deck. Those are the ones I was quoting the price of. Where we've seen those happen recently, most commonly, is on sites that are on GeoTracker that have a current or a previous cleanup case on them. We can't exempt those using the categorical CEQA exemption. So, and then an EIR might be required if you're going to demolish a historic structure. Then you'd have to do the biggest document, where you're looking at like $100,000 for that document. And that's really rare in Eureka, that you have to do a full EIR.
Well, I appreciate you and your team trying to demystify and simplify this process as best as you can. The last question I have is, I've heard it mentioned a few times, especially over the last few months, the pro-housing designation. Can you tell me a bit more about that, the elements that go into that, and how we're, I guess, provided points?
Sure. So the state has created this pro-housing designation, and you apply for it, and if you meet their criteria, you get it. And then they've already, at first it was only a few cities, more and more cities are applying for it because it's getting incorporated into more and more things like grant opportunities where you get extra points for having it. And you have to get at least 30 points to get it, and you have to get at least a certain number of points in each of these 4 categories. And so one of them is like having, not having regulatory barriers. One of them is funding, like us giving up city property for affordable housing, that counts in that category. So, and then if you can they've told us that, yeah, you need 30 points to qualify, but the more points you get after that, they're going to give you a full score, and the cities with the highest numbers, are going to maybe get looked down even more favorably. They haven't told us specifically what that's going to be, but we realize it's not just hitting the 30 points, but if we can get the highest number as possible, it's going to be better for us.
So they've really gamified housing policy.
Yeah.
We should get a badge at some point. Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any questions this way? Okay. No further questions? Seeing none, we'll open up this public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public who'd like to comment on this item? Come on up. Okay. Seeing no one in-house, do you see anybody on Zoom?
I do not see anybody on Zoom.
Okay. Last chance for the public in-house. Okay. Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council for a motion and comments and a vote. So we'll bring it back to council for... Councilmember Castellano.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. You did a remarkable job, to you and all of the planning staff, for analyzing and producing this document and these changes. I really appreciate it. And excited to see us moving forward with the pro-housing designation. And I do think you made some really good points about the value of objective design standards, versus subjective, and how, really it also gives planners and designers and architects more resources in order to achieve what we want in the city. So with that, I will make a motion, I suppose, to hold a public hearing and waive full reading and read by title only, and introduce Bill number 1032-CS, an ordinance of the City of Eureka amending portions of the Eureka Municipal Code, Chapter 155, for the September 2023 zoning code update.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. Moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed under this category are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. Pursuant to City Council Resolution 2011-22, if a member of the public would like an item on the consent calendar pulled and discussed separately, the request shall be made to a council member prior to the meeting. Unless a specific request is made by a council member, The consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items. And no one has asked me to pull anything? No? Okay. So with that, do we have to open to public comment? No. So with that, we'll take a motion from Councilmember Fernandez.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. First and a second, please vote.
Unanimous yes vote, motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. And that takes us to legislative action correspondence. Does anyone have any? No? All right. That will take us to city manager reports. That will not take us to city manager reports.
That will take us to future agenda items.
That will take us, oh, there is that one, isn't there? Future agenda items. I happen to know we have a few. So, does anyone have any future agenda items they'd like to discuss? I do not. You do?
Yeah.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Well, I have at least 3 asks, so if you could work with me for a moment.
A brief moment, right?
Thank you. I know we had already approved and supported or sent a letter of support for Senate Bill 58. I'd like to request that we place a resolution on our next agenda regarding the decriminalization and deprioritization of natural, I'm not going to get this right, entheogenics.
Close.
Yes. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Oh, is that all?
Well, for that one, yeah.
Okay, so thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways. So it looks like everybody's interested in that.
Okay.
Carry on.
And then my second ask, could we review our emergency shelter plan as we're now in fall and headed into what's presumably a cold and rainy winter?
Can we get a report on that? Because
we have that on our list to do. We've been coordinating the warming centers, and we are going to have a report hopefully next meeting, if not the first meeting in November, to discuss the volunteer program that we're working on, as well as the new facilities that will be available.
Okay. And lastly, less of an agenda item, but could we reach out to the school district again for a 2x2?
I don't think you need to vote on that. We've been on that one, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Publicly say that. Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, I don't know if this has been explored in the recent past, but public financing of campaigns. If that's something that this city has ever talked about. There's a lot of cities that have done it. I'm just curious if anybody has thought about it. Have we explored it? How would we do that? I don't know any of that. I'm just asking if this is something that we've considered.
Like an implementation of a cap on contributions, or?
Yeah, I mean, that could be one.
We do have that. It's $500 per year per individual.
I'm also thinking about whether there is a mechanism where we could fund regular citizens, who reach a requirement of getting a certain amount of signatures or something. Cities have done this. Just wondering, something to explore. Anybody interested?
Are you saying,
So what? Okay, I was gonna
just so we're clear before you guys vote on this, but are you saying using city funds, general fund monies to support certain qualifying candidates?
I see some head shaking. Yeah.
Why don't I do some research on this and send something out? If it seems like it has legs, we could potentially bring it back to the board.
Okay.
But I think that's worth spending some research time on first. I have some pretty serious doubts, but I don't want to weigh in without researching further. So if you'd allow me to do that first.
Thank you. And then one other thing, and maybe I brought this up before, I can't remember, but considering climate action plan and some of the discussions, and we've heard about this lately, as well as a lot of other things that the city does, having a designated sustainability coordinator. I think one of the presentations that I saw at Cal Cities, or I talked to people about it, I saw grant funding where a city basically got a big pot of money to fund a position for somebody to deal with electrification, and I know we have, people like Robin who are great, but somebody is solely dedicated to helping us implement the climate action plan, that kind of thing.
So when we discussed the climate action plan, that was something that we've been working on with HCOG.
That's right.
And so HCOG is looking into funding for that, for more of a regional sustainability coordinator. I also know that the county is hiring a consultant. I actually just got an email today to talk about a coordinator for them. But I think that's separate from what HCOG has been doing in relation to the climate action plan to potentially use, I believe it's more REAP money that they use for the CEQA document for the climate action plan, that they could potentially use that for a regional sustainability coordinator.
Okay. So we're thinking just going with a regional approach and hoping.
For now, I think there's going to be a lot of potential happenings in that arena over the next month or two. And so at that point, we're open to do whatever council wants it. I just want to let you know that that's something that's been pending.
Great. Councilmember Castellano?
Kind of related to the climate action plan, I think it could be useful to have a couple of council members that maybe have a subcommittee or a 2x2, or maybe not a 2x2, but a committee.
I think
that are working maybe just a little bit more deeply on this in order to bring things back to council and kind of engage with community meetings as needed.
So I think where this comes from is there's, I believe, a scheduled meeting with a couple of board supervisors, County of Humboldt board supervisors, to discuss some of the topics that have come up in relation to the climate action plan. And if that's something council would like to do, to designate two, we could reach out to them and hopefully participate in those meetings or meeting.
Yeah, interested. Yeah, I'm interested. I think maybe Scott.
So it looks like we have two people interested. We have Councilmember Castellano and Councilmember Bauer. I don't see anybody else. We're going to Rochambeau for it again. Okay. So you got it?
Yep, we will coordinate and try and make that happen. I think it's happening relatively quickly here, so we'll reach out tomorrow.
Great.
And get back to you guys soon.
Thanks so much. Does that answer what you need? Awesome. Thank you. All right, now we'll move on to City Manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to give a quick update. This has been a project that the city has been working on for, believe it or not, well over 2 years. It is the Hillficker site that we have been working in partnership with the Betty Kwan Chin Foundation for some transitional housing that's been proposed there. We went through a zoning change for the property that is located on Hillficker, right adjacent to the fire training facility. That took well over a year to do that. It was completed. We went out and sought encampment funding from Governor Newsom's encampment funds, received that funding. The initial project included utilizing old PG&E trailers to convert those into housing units. Those obviously caught on fire and were no longer there, so we went out and sought funding. We received $1.6 million, 1.2 of which from the encampment funding is to go towards new units for housing. We went out through a competitive process, awarded it. Those are going to be delivered. And by the way, it's 38 units of housing with 2 units for common space for both sanitary purposes as well as a kitchen. So those will be coming in the week of October 16th. We have put together a group of contractors and volunteers to help coordinate a volunteer workday. Public Works Director Gerving just received the installation guidelines. He says it's very much IKEA, but it's 103 pages. So there'll be a partnership with Mercer Fraser. They're going to provide some of their foremen and general, some of their employees to help with this build day. We reached out to College of the Redwoods and their program, and Derek Lavich will be there, as well as our current public chief building official, who's a general contractor, Chief Building Official Riley, and as well as our former chief building official, which is Public Works Director Gerving, will be on site to help direct folks for a volunteer cleanup. We're looking at a volunteer build day. So that volunteer build day will be likely right now, because we've had a lot of changes as far as delivery, but this is the last confirmation we got. We're looking at October 21st for a build day for this, and we'll be discussing it at our department head meeting and work with project manager Prasker on getting participation in this. And I think we won't have a hard time getting folks, but it'll be a volunteer build day to assemble all of these products. I know that everybody here went to the League of Cities and they had demonstrations of these. They're very similar to the Boss Cubes that were at the conference. So good news. We're hoping to have these up and built by the end of the month, hopefully. And we'll be bringing back a agreement with Betty Quan Chin for the operation of the facility. So good news, that's coming soon.
Great. Do we have any questions for City Manager Slattery? That's really exciting. It has taken forever.
It's about time.
It's about time.
Yes.
Gosh, it seems like we say that a lot. So we'll move on from that then to council reports and city-related travel. And we'll start with Councilmember Castellano.
Okie doke. Let's see. I attended the Eureka Main Street meeting, and I just want to welcome all the new board members, and thank Rima Greer, who's so busy. She's leaving the board for all of her service to the board and contributions. So, but it's been a great board, and excited to have new people on the board as well. I did also travel to the Cal Cities conference in Sacramento. I can't remember if I was elected or officially elected as the president of the Redwood Empire Division. So looking forward to serving in that way in the upcoming year. I continue to hold housing meetings on Mondays at 11 for cross-sector collaboration related to housing. I attended the HCSD Eureka 2x2 meeting, Humboldt Bay Fire meeting, and I'm part of this Live Well Humboldt group looking at community health. And then also just wanted to recognize Westside Community Center over the weekend held a celebration for Richard Evans, who was an amazing artist who contributed significantly to our city and to the region, and really the arts and culture community throughout California. And I just want to lift up Richard Evans and just honor his legacy here and afar.
An incredible human being. 100%. Thank you. Councilmember Contreras Deloche.
Hi. Okay. It's a list because it's been a little while, so I'll go quick though. Also got to attend the Cal Cities conference in Sacramento, and I got to go to the Women's Caucus meeting, and then I attended a few things that mainly I wanted to focus on stuff that had to do with like finance and like things like that kind of economics. And so the ones that I went to was Adapting Main Street for a Changing Retail Landscape and California Economic Forecast. Wasn't loving some of them. I'm going to kind of write thoughts about that, if I'm to be totally honest. So I was hoping some of the things would be a little bit more substantive. And then there were some other meetings that were just great. But I think one where I was really hoping that they were, the gist of it was everything's rosy, guys. it's all rosy. So, I got to see the boss cubes. That was really cool. I'm looking forward to that. So have drill, will travel. I'm excited for those. And then while I was down there, I got to attend the annual Native American Day at the California Capitol in Sacramento, and Mayor Burgell and Councilmember Fernandez also stopped over there, and that was really cool, really special for me. So I got to recently speak at the local women's club for their National Day of Service, their milk program that they've been running for over 2 decades that I didn't even know about, which is just awesome. Just a lot of really lovely people dedicated to service. So that was really, and there were some new people that had come just to kind of meet people in the community and were like, hey, we want to join too. So it was just kind of nice they were very pleased with their turnout too. And I met with Marissa Formosa from Planned Parenthood, and she's their kind of regional representative. And this was interesting because they're hoping to, right now in California, they're trying to expand services specifically into mental health because they see how frequently there's an overlap. So they're trying to move something forward right now. I think it's a bill that's being considered, I'm trying to remember, but that would allow them to, when they are concerned, for them to be able to do a referral and kind of work and have kind of an intake process so that they can kind of meet those needs for women and some men that they're seeing in there as well, which I think could be so helpful for a community like ours. And then I got to do the Pathway to Payday speech this morning. That's just like one of my favorite things ever. I just love the people going through that. And Sierra, I'm doing the week without driving, the week with far less driving. So I've been scootering around. Scott and I scootered. And so, and then just kind of hoofing. And it is a good reminder that it's a little tricky and difficult to get around. I went without a car for many years. So now I have, now that's not an issue, but it's a reminder of how difficult that is. Also, just a little quick reminder, October 9th is Indigenous Peoples Day. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez.
Thank you. Sorry for my absence the last few weeks. Been recouping from a personal injury. Currently participating in the week without driving as well, as best as I can, trying to hobble around and wait for people to give me rides. It's a bit more challenging than expected, and we'll see how the rest of the week goes. Like almost everyone else, I attended the League of Cities in Sacramento as well. Workshops included building a culture of accountability and transparency with the police department, building economically in challenging times, and how to solve big problems in small towns. There are small towns out there comparable to us in population, but certainly not in median wealth. And so I think I also have some similar issues with the presentations that took place, kind of forgetting about our rural and remote areas. So that's something I'll probably write about a little later too. Did receive my anti-sexual harassment training certificate again, got that out of the way, and had the opportunity to likewise attend Indigenous Peoples Day there at the Capitol. We have a lot of our local tribes making some great things happen and building their resources and coming together. Learned and had a discussion with our local housing authority about their repositioning plan. While I've been aware of our housing authority, I was not aware of our public housing stock, and not surprised how it's aged, considering some of it was built between the 1950s and the 1980s. And so they're going for grants to try and modernize a lot of those, and hearing the plans that they have to approximately update and add about 150 additional units. I am curious, and maybe I should have brought that up, if that would add to our housing stock as well, if they were to do that. Unknown. So I'd like to follow up with staff about how that works in our relationship with the housing authority. I too took the opportunity to visit one of the cruise ships. Great experience. Not great while you're on an injured knee with all the stairs. So I'll rethink that next time. And I would hope that the people who can afford to be on those type of ships are able to come into our community and help us with their resources as well, to put it nicely. And attended a community forum hosted by Decriminalized Nature Humboldt And yeah, I thought the mental health town hall this past weekend about children's mental health was fantastic. The turnout was great. We actually had someone there from Eureka City Schools who asked some questions and told us more about what they're working on, not to mention the ideas that Two Feathers had put out there as well. And so I would like to collaborate, or I would like to work with our city schools more collaboratively to put some of those programs together.
100%. Thank you. Councilmember Moulton.
Thank you. Let's see. I attended the Joint Powers Authority joint meeting between the City of Eureka and the Fire District, and of course all the board members for the JPA were there. Just very interesting. The agreement has been in place for 7 years now without any major review, so we're just kind of taking it all apart and looking at it on the inside, making sure it works for everybody and kind of adjusting things to evolve that and move forward so the agreement between the city and the fire district can continue to be healthy and productive. I've been working with constituents in the ward, talking to them about their concerns around the potential for the CHP to buy the Jacobs campus now that it is closer in possibility to being a reality. Folks really have a lot to say about it. So I've been working with folks to talk about that and get their needs and concerns recorded so that we can, when we have a seat at the table, as we continue to have a seat at the table, those concerns can be in the forefront. The folks that are living right there, the big changes in the neighborhood potentially. I did not attend the Cal Cities conference, unfortunately, with all of my colleagues because I run a small business and couldn't shut it down for the week. Just didn't have the option, but it's always an enlightening time, and I look forward to talking with my colleagues more about that. While I was at work, I met a bunch of international travelers. And I get a lot of tourists where I am, and that's always surprising to me. And every once in a while, I'm reminded that we're on an international port. And there were some folks who were sailing from Alaska through Canada down through Humboldt and moving on to Mexico. And I just love that we have that connection. There are folks coming through. And I told them how to walk to the zoo from where we were. They were excited about the big trees actually just being in town. I'm looking forward to our 2x2 with the chamber coming up. I'm looking forward to Arts Alive as always, especially because this one has a zombie walk. And I like that. That's fun. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Bauer.
Yeah, Councilmember Moulton just reminded me, I met an international traveler, an 18-year-old recent high school graduate who was biking from British Columbia to Mexico City the other day, and in the middle of the woods. Like, he was on 299. It was amazing, his story. I can't imagine doing that at that age, but it was really cool to see him, and he loved Eureka. I did attend Cal Cities, and I thought it was a great time, and I got sworn in to serve on the board of directors to represent Redwood Empire for another year, and I appreciate that. It's a good thing. It makes me feel like keeping Eureka relevant when we have 482 other cities out there competing for resources and whatnot. I did have a town hall for the 4th Ward and Supervisor Arroyo's district. Supervisor Arroyo was there, and we had a good time meeting people from the ward and in Sequoia Park. So it was fun. I wish attendance would have been 100 people, but we did have good turnout.
Tacos.
Yeah. And then I attended the Hammond Park block party, which was great. Great volunteer effort there, and planted a tree or two with Keep Eureka Beautiful. I attended the Big Brothers Big Sisters Cooper Gulch cleanup, which they were a fun group of kids and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and I was surprised by how little trash we picked up in Cooper Park. It was really cool to I scoured the creek and I found very little trash, so it was great to see that and to work with a big group of people that came out to do that volunteer effort. So super fun. And then I met with Planned Parenthood recently, and I also attended the JPA meeting that Councilmember Moulton was talking about, which was very informative and good. And I am participating in a week without driving, and I'm doing my best to stay out of the car. But it's really hard when a family member gets sick and all. So, and that's it.
Thank you. Well, of course, I forgot something and all of those things that I had to say, so I have to talk. I, too, am doing the week without driving. And I have to tell you that yesterday was really hard. It was really hard because, you know, we have all these different things. We have to be certain places, and there's not time in between to like ride my bike or walk across town or whatever. So, but I made it. I did not drive my car. I haven't driven my car in 2 days, and I feel really good about that. And also, well, a little pained by it, to be honest, but it's going okay. And then I just wanted to mention, I don't think I mentioned this, but our next town hall is December 2nd. Or maybe it's the 3rd. It's that Saturday, and it'll be on substance use disorder. So keep that on your calendar. We'd love to see everybody out at that. I took my ethics training, passed with flying colors. That's for anybody out there who was curious. Anyway, I think with that, we're adjourned. Everybody have a great week. 2 weeks. Bye-bye.